Welcome to Rauta. This video is done in commercial collaboration with our sponsor, Steelfest. Howdy folks and welcome to Rauta's Worst Best Videos. This time it's not really what you're expecting, extreme metal, but kind of old school hard rock and heavy metal. Crossroads where the things kind of get together in a nice old-fashioned way. And by old-fashioned I really mean it, since this band, Twisted Sister, started already in the 1970s. Now why this band is important to me is because of my childhood. When Jerry was about this size, well, I kid you a little bit, I think I was something like maybe 10 or less. Anyway, early 1980s. Born in 1975, in case you're wondering. When I started to hear heavy metal for the first time, there were few bands which were played, like, for example, Finnish music programs. And those programs were usually mainstream music, but every now and then there could be uh, some kind of a heavy metal or hard rock special. I think they were just called kind of a metal special, if you will. And there I would just, like, with my friends, suck in the music and find out about these interesting bands. By all I mean individual songs, obviously. Now I'm pretty sure still that my very first band, I mean in terms of metal, was Iron Maiden. But that really didn't define my musical taste back in the days. I guess I was still a little bit too small kid, to understand that kind of a heavy metal music and that kind of a dangerous tunes, even though it meant that I was using kind of a magic marker type of pen and ink, heavy or heavy metal, I am not sure. I think it was just heavy in my genes. Now, my mom wasn't really exactly happy about it, especially when she found out that I started writing heavy, uh, on, local, what you call playground items. I think there was a basketball thing, and then neighbors, window parts, whatever. Anyway, to a little bit forward this memory lane thing, it was a couple of years later when these kind of bands started to emerge. Mötley Crüe was among them, Kiss, Wasp, and, like I said, Twisted Sister. Bands like Europe and Skid Row and all that stuff came a little bit later on, but nonetheless they were the kind of defining moments in 1980s. Now, since Twisted Sister isn't exactly active, I mean, yeah, technically speaking, at least according to Metal Archives, they are still active in year 2023. They really have been recording new music. So let's just call it a band that is pretty much doing nostalgia shows or what have you. And if they ever come back, well, more than welcome. But now I think it's kind of a save time and space to just go through Twisted Sister discography, according to my opinion anyway, and talk about why certain albums are way better than the rest. Or more like why there is only one album that truly sucks and the rest are actually pretty goddamn good. Maybe not the top-notch material, but still, nonetheless. And in case you're wondering, like, so what is Twisted Sister discography looking like? I mean, this is interesting because, I mean, even though they started in 1970s, the early years, much I guess, like so many other bands back in the days, they had to do demos and perform live and all that stuff in order to kind of convince the labels or what have you that, hey, we guys are for real. We're not gonna just quit in a couple of years and get a haircut and real good job, but more like, yeah, this is our lifestyle, this is what we do, and we're gonna get better by doing it. So let's fast forward a little bit. So 1970s, the band was founded. Then you had this demo single whatever era, and it was 1980s, actually quite a few years later, when the debut album got out, Under the Blade, 1982. That was, by the way, the era when these kind of bands were just like coming with a boom. I mean, when we really think about it, so-called glam metal or hard rock or lighter end of heavy metal. We're not exactly talking about Venom here or Metallica or Slayer, but the kind of crossroads of heavy metal and hard rock. Then you have these albums coming out by the storm. And Twisted Sister is no exception. I mean, 1982, the debut album. The next year, the second album. Third year, 1984. Fast forward to 1985. And once again, you have fourth album in. So you have a lot of these singles here because that was the era. Music, television, and all. So bands were pushing the pedal. I mean, you just have to keep smithing when the iron is hot, like the saying goes. And only after four albums, there was like a 1 year's pause. You cannot really call it pause. They probably toured a lot. But 1987, another album. And then things changed. If you really take a look after 1980s, you won't find much, you know, interesting stuff. I mean, in terms of music related to albums or what have you, you have compilations, you have a live album, you have more compilations. It's getting crazy. So 1990s, the band was kind of a gone. And it was actually 2004 where they go Still Hungry, which is re-recording. So it doesn't really fit into terms of the list, but I'm going to mention it when we get through the ranking phase. And then some curious, weird album called A Twisted Christmas, which is obviously a Christmas album with a twist. That's a bad pun, but you get over it. And then just videos and compilations, live albums and what have you. Now, I'm not exactly sure which year it was, but I will say 2003 maybe when I was at Wacken Festival in Germany. And since it was my first year in Wacken, obviously I was very, very drunk, being Finn and all, being a big festival. So I wake up around maybe 9 p.m. in my tent, all alone. The rest of the guys from our camp, all gone, probably watching bands like they're supposed to. Me waking up in the middle of evening like, hey, Twisted Sister is playing, and I'm supposed to see it. I don't even remember what songs were playing, but I mean, it was 20 years ago. And I kind of missed that I missed half the show or even more than that. But then again, I was kind of happy that I actually woke up to Twisted Sister. I mean, it wasn't totally lost or missed, even though I don't really have proper recollections of the band on stage. Just me waking up in a tent. Twisted Sister is playing. Back to my childhood. Bzzz. It's like a time machine. All that being said, Twisted Sister is basically 1980s band. Anything after that is irrelevant when it comes to albums or any kind of a ranking. But since we have a couple of albums here, let's start doing the ranking and while I comment you, because I don't want to make this video 30 minutes or 60 minutes and I've already rambled enough about the past and the present and all that stuff. What makes also curious that when you take a look here at the years active, they had this thing going on in the 1970s. Yeah, but no albums. But the peak moments happened here before the 90s. And after that, they have like gone back, gone away, come back, gone away. But like I said, even though there is this longer span of time when the band has been active, it's not like they actually recorded any new music, except those kind of a comeback albums, which are not exactly purely anything new. Anyhow, let's get to the ranking. Now, obviously, this is kind of obvious if you really think first. And in my opinion, the only bad album by Twisted Sister is A Twisted Christmas. Now, this is something that was kind of hilarious to listen here in Spain when I'm walking, down the beach line, and I'm listening to a Christmas album. This only emphasizes the very, very contrast that I have problem with. Because in my opinion, a lot of these bands, especially bands from, West Coast, metalcore and the like, are exactly that. Listenable by the beach. When you have a Christmas album by a hard rock heavy metal band, it gets like weird. But the problem is obviously not where you listen to this. The problem is I hate Christmas albums. Why do I hate them? I'm not a Christmas person. As a kid, Christmas was fun. When heavy metal bands started to do Christmas albums, it just get awkward, or even like nowadays people say, cringy. Now, that wouldn't be a problem if the album was good, obviously. I could just, turn a blind eye and say, pretend I don't hear the Christmas elements here because the music is good. But unfortunately, it's not. And when I say this is bad album, I only mean it in the terms of Twisted Sister terms. As an album, it's kind of a mediocre. It's not even that bad. But in so many ways, it's more like what Cold Lake is to, Celtic Frost. It just feels that bit wrong. But as an album, without the name and all that stuff, it's not that bad. I mean, the guys give what they have. They're making it kind of a hard rock, heavy metal version of, what Christmas music is. But that doesn't excuse this album. I mean, it doesn't justify it. The point here is, it's an album that could have been left undone. This could have been like, I don't know, live album bonus tracks or whatever. But as an individual album, it's like, why? Why on earth you did it? I mean, if you get paid a big gazillion pieces, coins of money, and you get to, pay your mortgage or, get your divorce payments done, or buy a nice car, Porsche maybe, then maybe this is justified. But only if you got a lot of money. I mean, from an artistic point of view, this album sucks big hairy monkey balls, and by no means I would say anyone should listen to it because there's no reason to listen to it. Just forget its existence, delete it from your memory. I kind of hope I had never heard it. But like I said, if it wasn't without Twisted Sister, if it was some like I don't know charity album by Rockstar All Stars, maybe like it would be like yeah, it's kind of a cringy, but you'll get over it. Now, if we start ranking the actual albums, the ones that actually define how Twisted Sister is, and start talking about the rather good songs, then we go for Love Is for Suckers. Now, this is clearly almost like a turning point for Twisted Sister. The point here is, it sounds like a softer version of Twisted Sister, as if these guys were getting like more adult in a way, more like they wanted to go more Alice Cooper than the Mötley Crüe and Wasp style. Like, let's move away from the heavy metal and start doing this on a soft sound. And this is emphasized even like minor details like the snare sound. The snare sound is like, you know what I'm talking about when you know 1980s stuff. It's not like so much like we're gonna sound bad as it's almost like some kind of a hard rock going AOR direction. And then there are these songs which just kind of sound cheesy and you're like, it's not cringy, but it's like, guys, are you sure this is the right direction? Now, if I was a little bit evil here, I would say this is why Twisted Sister broke up to begin with. I mean, the thing here is, this album is actually very listenable, but you have to kind of take Def Leppard, whatever look into it. It's like I said, Twisted Sister with some sugar coating. It's not bad if you think about it, but the songs are just more cheesy. It's more like, yeah, we do what we want, like rebelled against the school and, whatever, freedom and rebellion. And this is more like, baby, come back to me. I don't want to hear baby come back to me music when I'm listening to Twisted Sister, if you get my point. Apart from those cheesy elements, it's actually pretty decent of an album. I mean, it's kind of a the Twisted Sister doing Bon Jovi kind of a thing. So, kind of a nice when you're in love and want to hold some hands. But if you're wanting to, drink beer with your badass friends and just like stay rebel, doesn't matter how old you are, this is not the album to go. This is not for, motorcycling or going to beach for a drink. But we can just like let it slide in because it's still nicely done and all that stuff. And I love what Dee Snider sounds like. I mean, he always still has this good song, and he's a smart person. You all know this if you have been watching his interviews, with the when we had this parental advisory things back in the 80s when he was in a court of law. He's a smart person, and he is a good vocalist. And by no means, I'm disrespecting the rest of the guys here. I'm just saying that Dee Snider can save a lot of songs. That's the point here. Now, taking a look at my notes here on my secondary screen so that I don't forget too many things, let's move on to a next album. And my next album would be roughly the same level, but not as cheesy, and it would be the second album, You Can't Stop Rock and Roll. The thing here is, this is a little bit more memorable and definitely not so soft. So even though I would be ranking them with a roughly same score, I think this is the kind of album that defined Twisted Sister's modern style. By modern, I mean after the debut album. They kind of solidified what's going on, and they kind of made a point. We're not to joke around. We're gonna do some proper hard rock and heavy metal twist, and this is pretty nice of an album. I mean, it has definitely stood the test of time, and now some 40 years later, listening to this album, it feels very fresh. Obviously, it sounds like kind of a 1980s album, given the production and all, but can't really bitch about it. And if I had to, for example, pick a song here, like unlike those two previous albums, I don't want to do that. But for example, this is a very, very good song, which is definitely the kind of a good mood Twisted Sister is showing. Like, I'm me. Already when I'm mentioning it, the song starts instantly playing in my head because it's that catchy and not in a bad way. So this would be my third worst album. But sounds so weird to say it's a bad one because it's not the worst one. Just in the terms of ranking, it's the one that doesn't really go to top three, if you will. Now then it gets more complicated because the thing here is, well, there is no big difference in terms of quality because Twisted Sister pretty much always was so consistent with the quality and style, which is obviously a great thing. It gets harder and harder to figure out which is the best. Some people would probably say this one is the best because it's the kind of the most heavy metal album of the whole discography, but I would rank under the Blade, the debut album, as number 4. Why only number 4 is that, in my opinion, the band matured great. So even if they lost a little bit of that heavy metal edge, this is debatable, this album is still not as good when it comes to songwriting. This is kind of a typical debut album. You have some good ideas and then you keep like honing, polishing them, taking them to the next level. So this is why it goes to spot number 4. This is assuming Still Hungry kind of accounts, because technically speaking it doesn't, being a reissue, but let's get back to that in a bit. But if we count that into this whole thing, I would say yes, this is the kind of a number 4 album. Mainly because this is not as catchy as the albums later on. And it kind of showcases what Twisted Sister is all about. Production solid, Dee Snider vocals all solid, having this kind of a heavy metal hard rock blend, and it works out nicely. But the bad thing here is, if we can call it a bad one, is that it doesn't have those hit songs the band is most infamous or just famous for. And as such, it goes to spot number 4. Now you're wondering like what this guy is all about. He's crazy with his opinions and how can you say that? That's the point here. And now if we include Still Hungry, I would put it in the spot number 3. And now you're why spot number 3? How can you call it? Because it's supposed to be the better version of Stay Hungry. But in a way, it's not. I mean, it pales in comparison in the sense that obviously the guys are not as young anymore when doing this album. So while the songs are basically as good, it kind of lacks certain level of authenticity. And that's one of my minor problems. I mean, the album is very, very listenable. And if I would put like pistol on the temple of my, like, Jerry, big one, I wouldn't care. Whatever answer came, out of my mouth the first, I would be saying like, yeah, it's honest opinion. But if I have to be a little bit of critical about it, like which one is actually more likable, which one I would not have to pick, I would say, yes, the original Stay Hungry is better than Still Hungry. And now there's no reason for me to go through this album because, basically re-recording and all that stuff. So let's move to the absolute top of the game by Twisted Sister, the 2 best albums. And then you have only albums left, Stay Hungry from 1984 and Come Out and Play 1985. Now Come Out and Play would be my second. This is the album which I got on tape, roughly 1985. I was probably 10 years old. I'm not exactly sure if that was the year, but pretty sure because I have already heard Twisted Sister before that. And I got this something like birthday present or something. And of course, back then, even as a kid, you have a huge expectations when you have a band that you've been liking already. And then you're getting a new album. Much like nowadays when your favorite band releases a new album and you're like, I want to hear so badly. What's it all about? Is it as good as the previous one? And basically it is. Now Come Out and Play starts with a kind of an intro which now it seems kind of a nostalgic in a way. Those clinging sound, Come Out and Play. And yeah. And then it goes with a cover, which is pretty weird way to start an album. I mean, being a second track. Leader of the Pack. I disliked this song when I was a kid because there were songs like, you know, I Wanna Rock or whatever, or Come Out and Play. And then you have this kind of a leader of the pack, din, din. It's too soft. It was too soft when I was a kid. Now that I'm closer to 50 than 30, it doesn't actually sound that bad. Actually, it's pretty good of a cover. But back then, I was so disappointed why this was made into a video, song. Why this was a music video when they had their own song. It was this cheesy cover, and it's not that good as some of the better songs here. But nowadays, it doesn't sound that bad. But yeah, why this is not the first album is that Still Hungry actually has better songs. In other respect, this is, in my opinion, very, very close to the quality of Stay Hungry. The thing here is, by this time the band had totally figured out their style, the vocals, the production, the riffs, how to do catchy stuff and all. So basically, the only reason why I'm not putting this on the first spot is there are two reasons. First of all, this really didn't improve from that. And whenever I have this contest, like you have two absolutely, you know, equal albums, what goes first is the one that got to do it first. It's much like in sports. If both there's like two competitors and they both do the same record, obviously the one that made it first wins. And pretty much the same thing is with Stay Hungry from 1984, the third album, which is often called a crossroads album for many bands for a couple of reasons. First of all, that's when you know the band has kind of a honed style, making the debut album with the original ideas, then honing the ideas with the second one, and third, it's either like let's keep the track we have already figured out, or let's move on, create something new, like shedding the skin and all that stuff. And I think this applies both ways to Stay Hungry. First of all, this time they really made those unforgettable hit songs, but also they kind of kept going the track they had. Instead of like, should we take a turn to the left or right or just keep going? They kept going. And fortunately so, because in my opinion, this is as much as with the cover, this is what it is. It's all about heavy metal and danger and upsetting things. Like one could say, like, why Dee Snider looks like some transsexual thing. That's part of the thing. They are not some normal guys, blue collar thing, having their shirts buttoned up and all that stuff, looking like some boring self-loading worker from his blue collar job or working for McDonald's from 97 or something like that. I don't know why it's 97. The point here is these guys were not normies. They were the dangerous heavy metal guys, much like the guys from, Wasp or, Metal Crew and the like. They all had something different, out of ordinary, and that's part of the charm in a opinion. Just like check it out, those old Twisted Sister music videos, like I Wanna Rock or like it's top of my thing. Anyway, the point here is if you go for these old songs, what they made into videos, maybe not the leader or the back though, they were always like, yeah, I really love what they're going to. No, we're going to take it. That was the song I was thinking of. That this was right before my eyes. The also, funny thing is, Burning Hell is here as a third track. And it's even that bad as of a track that even some of the black metal bands have, covered it. Like Dimmu Borgir made a great homage with Burning Hell. So the point here is, it is the kind of stuff that kept inspiring us guys, which were younger than Twisted Sister, but still born in the 90s, 70s. But the overall, Stay Hungry is the album for Twisted Sister. I mean, songs like Stay Hungry, already great tune, great opening track, followed by We're Not Gonna Take It, which is probably even better, could be even the best song by them ever. Then followed by Burning Hells. Then you might skip this Captain Howdy, which is not a bad one, but I mean, it's not I Wanna Rock. And Lord, Don't Let Me Down, another great song also. So my point here is, this is a good solid album that is probably the most hit-filled album up to date and will be as such forever. So definitely the number one. I kind of understand why on average your Metal Archives this is over 90%. I mean, it's obviously very, very fan-driven reviews. It's not like some random listener is going to just like review album that is like 40 years old. But the point here remains, this is an album that made impact and maybe the most loved because of that. So why would you need need the album called Still Hungry when you can just go with the original ones and hear the 1980s thing. Doesn't matter if the musicians themselves felt like we need to re-record it because, you know, you don't really need to re-record a good album. But I'll forgive it. I don't mind because sometimes the newer ones are actually better than the original ones. I know it's a heretical take. It's almost like blasphemy when I'm talking about these like bands like About Manowar or Dimmu Borgir doing that. But yeah, I don't really care. If band wants to re-record some of their earlier material, why the hell not? Especially if they don't have any as good new songs up in their sleeves and all that stuff. Okay, this video is already way too lengthy. My point here is Twisted Sister is still a good band and something that especially younger generation might want to take a look at because it showcases how good hard rock and heavy metal was done in the 1980s. And these kind of bands kept inspiring us who later on moved towards thrash metal, death metal, black metal and beyond. But these kind of classics never get old. They never wear down. They're always there to cheer you up, even if you're like 80. I'm looking forward to being 80 and listening to Twisted Sister in the retirement home. Let's see if I get that old and let's talk about that. Now off you go. Enjoy some Twisted Sister and have fun with it. Take care and see you soon. Bye bye.